Good afternoon. This webinar offers closed captioning. To enable closed captioning, click on the live transcript button on the bottom of your screen and choose your preferred method. Welcome to the City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection webinar. Please note any website or email that I mentioned will be posted in the chat box. For those seeking business licensing assistance, you can visit the Small Business Center at City Hall or call 312-74-GO-BIZ. Also, business licenses can be applied for or renewed online at chicago.gov/business licensing. The BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program now has a new portal, and getting your certificate is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Register for the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program. Attend 6 free BACP webinars from the listed categories and receive credit after each. 3. Graduate from the program and receive your certificate. Graduating from the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program makes you eligible to apply for a CIBC USA Entrepreneurial Loan Program. For full program details, visit chicago.gov/BACP certificate. For webinar calendar, please visit chicago.gov/BACP webinars. If you are already a part of the program, your account will automatically reflect the credit for joining this webinar within 24 hours. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be available at youtube.com/ChicagoBACP. I will post the mentioned information in the chat box. We encourage attendees to ask questions. Please use the chat box to send your questions. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Today's webinar will be Good Food Fund, Capital and Coaching for Food and Beverage Entrepreneurs, presented by the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection and Allies for Community Business. Turning it over to Isabel.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I am just here to give you a quick welcome and talk about the Good Food Fund. The Good Food Fund is one of the BACP's economic recovery programs. We have BACP's working, Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, has 3 categories where our economic recovery programs lie: business support, nonprofit capacity building, and food equity. The Good Food Fund is one of these food equity programs. We also have the Community Growers Program, the Food Business Incubator Program, and this Good Food Fund. You can find more information about that or all our other programs on chicago.gov/BACP Recovery Plan. A little bit about the Good Food Fund. Allies for Community Business was selected to manage the $5 million fund. This fund is designed to provide vital support to food entrepreneurs operating in neighborhoods with limited access to food. And through this program, we will foster equity and community engagement, and we aim to expand and enhance the local food system. Through these programs, food businesses will be able to get grants, food business technical assistance, and low-interest loans. And with that, I will pass it to Brad.
Sherilyn and Isabel, thank you very much. I appreciate that. My name is Brad McConnell. I'm the CEO of Allies for Community Business, and we're going to spend about 10 minutes walking through all of those services that Isabel just described, and we'll do so in a way that hopefully gets through the material reasonably quickly so that we can get to your questions. We'll spend the rest of the time answering those one at a time. So just first, a brief introduction of our organization. Our vision is that entrepreneurs from any background start and grow the businesses that create real wealth in our families, in our communities, and our mission is to provide all 3 of the capital and the coaching and the connections that entrepreneurs need to grow great businesses, create jobs and wealth in their communities. We've done a lot in the last 4 years, dispersing over $700 million, but we know it's not nearly enough. And so we're here today to talk about what more we can do specifically for food and beverage businesses, although to be clear, Allies for Community Business serves entrepreneurs in all industries across Illinois and Indiana, but a very specific focus on our work here in the food and beverage space because of some things I'll explain in a little bit. So again, as Isabel suggested, there are 3 components to the Good Food Fund, which we're here to talk about today. The 3 parts are, first, free money. Grants are good. We like grants. Free money is coming soon, and we are intending on launching the first round of grants in early March. Don't have a specific date on that yet, but trust that we will be very aggressive in getting the word out through all the channels of the city and Allies for Community Business to make sure that you're all aware when it is time to apply for grants that are specific to food and beverage businesses in the city of Chicago. We'll be doing that in multiple rounds throughout 2024, but we'll be dispersing $5 million by the end of this year to food and beverage businesses in the city. In addition, we're also offering very low interest loans at 3% interest. That launched last week. And so we're now going to be, for the rest of 2024, A4CB will be offering these very low interest loans, which we're going to talk about in some length here in a little bit. Aside from both of those things, we're launching tomorrow an opportunity to get free business coaching that is very specific to the needs of food and beverage businesses. And we're eager to be able to share that assistance to anybody who's interested in it, whether or not you get a grant or a loan or even interested in that. The free coaching is here for you regardless. So let's talk about all of those pieces as we go. First, A4CB offers loans and grants. I already mentioned the grants, so let's specifically focus on how we do our loans so that you can figure out whether this is something is interesting to you, and if so, at what amount will you be eligible? So we offer loans between $500 and $100,000 to businesses that maybe nothing more than an idea, all the way to businesses that have been in operation for 50 years and they're trying to figure out what they should do next and everything in between. So when we're doing our lending, we are focusing on the things that we think are most predictive of your repayment. And so we operate a little differently than other lenders, particularly if you're comparing us to your more traditional federally regulated or state regulated banks. So we don't use credit scores at all. We don't put liens on your personal assets. We don't care how much your house is worth, how much your car is worth. None of that matters. What we're doing instead is we're evaluating how well you as an entrepreneur have managed your debts over the last 2 years. And then can you make a repayment to us in the amount that you're seeking? And we just evaluate both of those two things in a really efficient manner, which we'll talk about in more detail in a second. So try to be really efficient, meet you where you are, because we know that entrepreneurs' time is very, very scarce. So we can make offers in as little as 24 hours, just depending on the responsiveness for you and the questions that we might have. We typically offer loans at 9% interest. So prime rate right now is 8.5%. Your average credit card rate right now is about 28%. We lend at 9%. But for you, for food and beverage businesses, again, starting last week throughout the rest of 2024, 3% loans, 2% closing fee. That's it. So our standard term is 36 months. And in other words, you will borrow for a 3-year period. We'll talk about some adjustments to that, but that's kind of where we start. So those are the basics. You'll get the list of sort of calls to action, places to go next at the end, but just know that if you're interested in a loan at 3% interest, a4cb.org/loans is the place to go. We'll come back to that URL in just a minute. But there's 2 different options here. So for some, the right thing to do here will be a term loan. And for others, the right thing to do will be to apply for a line of credit. So in a term loan, again, between $500 and $100,000, your term will be somewhere between 12 months and 36 months. It depends on the amount of money that you're borrowing. You'll be paying the full amount of what we call fully amortized. In other words, all of the principal and interest in equal payments in every single month until the loan is fully repaid. There's a lot of different ways in which you can use a term loan, but typically you're trying to match up the fixed amount that you owe somebody else who you're paying from us, whether that be a vehicle or something like that. That's typically what you'd use a term loan for. Now, different is line of credit. So the term loan is kind of like a mortgage. The line of credit is a little bit like a credit card, where you get interest-only payments, so just that 3% interest for the first year. And then after that, whatever's left, if you have a balance that's outstanding at the end of that 12-month interest-only period, then that balance, that remainder that you have, we'll then treat that then as a 3-year term loan thereafter. So just sort of have the same monthly payment in month 13 all the way through to the end of what really turns into the 4th year, because you've got 3 years that you're going to pay on a regular basis. And typically what this line of credit is used for are things that are variable in nature. So payroll goes up and down if you need extra staff or not, project material, sales events, and so forth. So we will talk this through with you if you're interested in either of those 2 options to help you sort of decide which is best for you. So let's talk about how we go about evaluating your application if you choose to apply for it, for a loan up to $25,000. So first, what we're going to do is pull your credit report at your authorization. And we're going to be looking for specifically 3 things. 1, past 24 months, have you avoided bankruptcies or large collections? Second, for the last 12 months, do you have at least one open line of credit outstanding to somebody? Do you owe somebody something? And have you made all those payments on time over the last 12 months? And really, both of those are just evaluating, do you have good habits? Because if you have good habits, you're probably going to pay us back, is our theory. And then third and finally, today, at this moment, do you have at least 25% available to borrow on all your open lines that you have with other lenders? Because we want to make sure you're not just borrowing from us to go pay somebody else. That doesn't help you grow your business. And also, we evaluate right then, are you able to pay us back? And we do that by just comparing your debts to your income. And we want to make sure that the loan that we would provide you wouldn't put you into a situation in which you have more than 40% of your income being sort of eaten up by debts. That's too high, and we don't want to make that situation any worse. So we evaluate that just as you sit today. That's it. That's the whole process. We do all of that electronically while you wait, because we're going to ask you to authenticate our ability to go pull all of that information from your credit report and from your bank balances on an electronic read-only basis, and we'll do all the work for you. So then when we get to that point, if we say, all right, yep, this person's ready, we're going to size your loan such that the largest monthly payment that you've been making over the last 12 months to somebody, we will lend to you up to 1.5 times that amount, because that tells us that you've been able to handle that amount, and we're going to have faith in you to handle a little bit more than that. So that's up to $25,000. And if your startup, meaning your first sale, was less than 6 months ago, we'll cut that in half to be a little bit more conservative to say, we'll give you a loan up to $12,500. And then once you get to, say, 7 months away from your first sale, then you'll be eligible for the $25,000. So that's typically the way that we evaluate loan requests up to $25,000. So separately, if we decide, because you asked us that you'd rather have us evaluate just your financial statements, we can do something a little bit differently, where we'll look at your personal and business bank account information, similar way, but a little differently. And again, we're going to be looking for that global debt to income ratio to be less than or equal to 40%, because we don't want to put you into more debt than you can handle. And then aside from all of that, let's say that you weren't eligible for whatever reason because of one of these criteria. We are still eager to lend you up to a small amount, $2,500, because we want to make sure that as long as your debts are current today, even if you struggled in the past, we can give you a small amount to help you rebuild that credit that'll help you be more eligible down the road. So that's how we think about the sequence of the steps that we will use to evaluate your loan application if you're interested for that 3% loan. So similarly, if you're looking for a larger loan between $25,000 and $100,000, we're going to functionally do what we just described. Instead of it being kind of you meet one set of criteria or the other, it's just both. So we're going to do the exact same things off your credit report that we just talked about before. Those are on the left. And then the items on the right are the items that are specifically off of your financial statements, where we're looking at that debt to income ratio that I mentioned before, and we will add a check about something called a debt service coverage, which we're going to use your tax returns to evaluate to make sure that you're able to cover the amount of money that you need to repay using a slightly different calculation that gives us a little bit more clarity on your financial situation. So we'll use both a debt to income ratio and a debt service coverage ratio for those larger amounts. All of this we will talk through with you in as much detail as you would like, either before you apply, during the application process, whatever your preference, because we will assign one of our community lenders at Allies for Community Business to talk you through all of your options and all of these details. So that is the entirety of our credit policy. There's no kind of separate committee that evaluates and tries to sort of figure out, like, yes, no's, how we're going to figure out who to fund or not. We just look at these rules and apply them uniformly in order to be as equitable as possible to the people we're seeking to serve. So that's the story on the lending. But remember that that's all complemented by the business coaching that we provide, which is free. And we're launching now even more specific food and beverage business coaching for all of you who have industry specific needs or generic needs that are kind of the same as businesses in all industries. Either way, it's totally fine with us. We're ready for you. So that coaching takes two different forms, one-on-one and in groups. So for our one-on-one coaching, we list here just a handful of the typical things that we'd work with entrepreneurs to try to accomplish. But really, the most important thing to know here is we listen first. So you go to a4cb.org/coaching. You click that I want a free coaching session. You then get presented with a calendar. You pick a time that's convenient for you. Typically, we do these online, but you're welcome to come in and see us at the hatchery, which we'll talk about in a minute. Either way, whether it's online or offline, we're going to listen first in that first 30-minute conversation and work out together what things are most valuable for you to work on using our methodology we've developed over several years of doing this, where our full staff team of 6 people have been working a long time with entrepreneurs throughout Chicagoland in order to construct what we think are the most logical things for you to pursue as a business. But it depends on where you are and what you need. So we're going to sort of situate our work with you around where you are and where you want to go individually in that way. This is just a representative sample. There's lots more of other things that we could potentially do to be helpful for you. So on top of that, we try very hard to do our work in internet space, which focuses on kitchen space and licensing and larger contracts for food and beverage businesses who want to go beyond the capital and the coaching, which we provide to everybody. So we're going to talk about each of these in turn. So let's start with the kitchen space that we offer. So Allies for Community Business is the co-owner and co-operator of the Hatchery, which is the largest food and beverage incubator in the country, run by nonprofits. We're based on the west side at the corner of Lake and Kedzie and Garfield Park, as I sit here today. And we're doing a lot of things in the building. So we try to identify all those things here for you on screen. But the most important of which, I think for your purposes, is that we are focusing on helping food businesses grow. We've got 54 private kitchens. We've got 5 shared kitchen spaces, which are rental by the hour, and all of the other physical services that you need, dry and cold storage, the loading docks, meeting spaces, gathering spaces, and the rest. Very accessible by transportation. We're right on the Green Line stop at the Kedzie stop, and buses and parking and all the rest as well. On top of the assistance we provide to food businesses specifically, we're also doing 2 workforce development programs here to help you to have access to high quality talent when you need it. So there's an adult training program and a young adult training program, which is specifically focused on creating great chefs. We do that in partnership with Chef Rick Bayless and call it the Impact Culinary Training Program. And we also are the base here for the Garfield Park Neighborhood Market. So if you're interested in selling at the farmers market that we hold on usually a either monthly or twice a month basis, depending on the weather, you have an opportunity to do that too. All of that is done here at the hatchery, and A4CB works with our partner ICNC to provide all of those services to anyone who's interested in the food and beverage space. In addition, we'll help you with your licensing if you need it, because we recognize that it can be complicated, specifically within this industry, to make sure you have all of the certifications and licensing that is required for you to be able to produce food safely and with all of your certifications. So we are a Chicago Business Center, one of the 8 in the city, and we will be eager to help you with that for whatever you need. And then we recognize that in order to build your business, you got to continue to build more and more contracts that are growing in size. And so we try very hard to help connect the entrepreneurs that we serve with our institutional partners who are looking for more diverse entrepreneurs to be able to partner with in order to have that spend that those buyers need to get into somebody's hands, that we get as much of those contracts, as much of those dollars to the entrepreneurs that we serve in our neighborhoods as we possibly can. Again, to get help with either one of those 2 things, same place, a4cb.org/coaching. So there's your list of all the things that you can do to contact us. A4cb.org is the place to start with basically anything. You've got your loan options and your coaching options. If you've got partners that you'd like to send through a4cb.org/clients, we're eager to serve anybody who you recommend, and you can follow us and all the rest. So remember, grants, free money coming soon. That's in early March. Loans at 3% interest, that's available now. Coaching, specifically for food and beverage entrepreneurs, is essentially available now. It's officially launched this tomorrow, but let's just say we're available now. We're eager to help, and we're ready. So all of those services are available when you are ready. And now it's time, I think, to take your questions. I'll spend the rest of the time on that. So Geraldine, over to you, please.
Great, thank you so much. A few questions to come in. Do you need an appointment?
For any of our services, whether that be coaching or lending or anything you'd like, you get to set an appointment at whatever time is convenient for you, or you just walk in the door at the hatchery, whichever you prefer. So again, when you specify, I'm interested in free coaching, or I'm interested in talking about a loan, or soon, I'm interested in a grant, any of those, we will have a calendar that pops up for you to select the time that's easiest for you to make, and you can choose that, lock it in, that time is yours. Or if you wish, we're here at the hatchery at the corner of Lake and Kedzie in Garfield Park. Walk on in and ask to see Allies for Community Business. We're right next to the front door.
Okay, great. Will you provide where to apply for the grants and loans?
Yes. So for the loans, a4cb.org/loans. For the grants, we don't have that up yet, but we will make sure that everyone knows who's on this distribution list when the grant is available, along with the link to the grant.
Great. Is this open for Chicago only or suburbs as well?
It's a good question. So the low interest loans and the grants are all city funded, and therefore that's going to be specifically for business addresses within the city of Chicago. The free coaching that we provide, we'll provide that to anybody who's interested, because we're eager to help businesses throughout Illinois and Indiana. And so that's not restricted at all. If you are a non-Chicago business, you are also eligible for loans from us. It's just that it's our normal rate of 9% interest, 2% closing fees, rather than 3% interest, 2% closing fees. But we can still work with you on the lending as well if you are interested, which again, given the prime rate's 8.5%, 9% is pretty good at the moment. So that is also an option to you if you're outside the city.
Great, thank you. Is there a list of eligibility requisites or requirements for grants?
There will be. So great question. When we launch the grant, we're going to try to be very transparent about who is eligible on the one hand, and then who will be a priority applicant that we're going to start with and just see how far the money goes on the other hand, so that we can avoid having entrepreneurs who aren't eligible waste their time. Your time is way too valuable to be wasted applying for things you're not eligible for. So we will post those eligibility requirements in the exact same place where you can find the link to apply. So you can skim those requirements first and decide for yourself, all right, is this worth my time or not? So that will be available in early March. And the place where we're going to host all of that information is that BACP site that Isabel provided in the beginning, and we will make sure is in the chat before this is over.
Great. We serve a community where many asylum seekers are interested to start food and beverage businesses. Is legal status necessary to apply?
No. So if an entrepreneur is somebody who has nothing more than an idea and they're interested in trying to build a business, then in that circumstance, we will be happy at A4CB to help that person be sort of thinking about the coaching that they need, the capital that they need, and then all the supportive services around them that they need. Now, to be clear, on the grants that we're talking about, that free money that we're going to be distributing, we haven't finalized the eligibility criteria for that yet. And it's possible that you'll have to have been in business for some period of time in order to access at least some of those grants. I'm not sure about that part yet. And we won't know that until we are ready to launch the grant program. But for the purposes of the free coaching and the lending, if you are establishing a business in the city of Chicago and you have some address within the city of Chicago to substantiate that you're eligible for these services, then yes, we'd be happy to help.
Great. Should we get our business license first before applying for a grant? I'm just starting out.
It's a good question. The answer is, I think in my mind, yes, always, because you're gonna need your business license anyway. So just if you're really intent on starting and growing a business, you should definitely get moving on getting the licensing that you need in order to operate legally. I suspect that the grants will be targeted towards those who already have their licenses, because it's one way for us to substantiate that this is something that's real and it's somebody who's not sort of fraudulently trying to figure out how to get through the system. Having a license is a legitimizing way for us to be able to tell what's what when the applicants come in. So I would highly encourage anybody who's interested in starting a food and beverage business in the city of Chicago to go through the licensing process early days.
Great, thanks. Do you provide training for food sanitation?
We do. And so as part of the specific food and beverage industry coaching, we will help you to understand what it is that you need to do in order to get your sanitation, your ServSafe certifications, and everything else that's related to that. And that's a really crucial thing to be doing early because it's one of those certifications amongst many that you really need to have in hand in order to grow a successful food and beverage business. So we will absolutely help you figure out what's required depending on what it is you're trying to do.
Great. Will grants be open for startups or just established businesses?
I'm not sure yet. And so we're working with a community advisory council who's helping A4CB and the city to figure out the specific eligibility criteria and also the criteria for prioritization amongst those who are eligible. And the degree to which time in business is going to be either required or important, depending. We haven't figured that out yet. So that is absolutely to come in early March when we launch the program.
Great. Can this funding be used to open a business in O'Hare?
Can you ask that one more time? I think you got cut off at the end, Geraldine.
Sure. Can this funding be used to open a business in O'Hare? I'm assuming at the airport.
Yes. So yes, because clearly that is a City of Chicago business address. As long as you have, well, two things. One, if you are a City of Chicago resident who already has a business that is licensed and registered in the City of Chicago, you're good. If you haven't done that yet, and you're just sort of thinking about having a City of Chicago business and the location happens to be O'Hare, then need to substantiate that you are a Chicago business in order to be eligible for the grant. Again, the coaching and the loans, that's not so stringent. If you want the 3% loans for food and beverage businesses in the City of Chicago, then of course you need to be established as a food and beverage business in the City of Chicago, and your license needs to reflect that. But otherwise, I think if you are not that far along yet, then you're still eligible for the 9% interest loans, but not the Good Food Fund specific funding.
Great. Do you check both personal and business credit?
Oh, good question. So this is specifically for the loans. When we evaluate your ability to repay, which is in part based on your habits, we pull your personal credit report. And the idea there is that we're trying to figure out if you yourself, you as the entrepreneur, are a good credit risk. Most, I'd say, well, let's call it many of the entrepreneurs we serve haven't established business credit yet. And it's just too early in their business, or the business is too small at this moment. That's okay. And we're not going to hold that as a penalty against your loan application. Everybody who is applying needs to have some personal history with handling debt. Otherwise, it'd be nothing for us to evaluate. So we focus on the personal for that reason. And we also are reporting back to the credit bureaus for your own kind of personal repayment habits over the course of time as you're repaying your loan.
Great. Will Allies for Community work with an individual to become loan or grant eligible to open up a food and beverage establishment?
Yes. So that's where the free coaching comes in. And again, if you have nothing more than an idea, that's fine. Let's get started. And the first conversation we have with you will be focused on what are those initial steps that you need to take. That conversation is very different than somebody who's been in business for 30 years and they have totally different needs. And we're eager to help with either one of those or anything in between. So for sure, sign up for free coaching. And then depending on where you are in your journey, we'll talk you through what your options are for further assistance, whether that be grants or loans or whatever it might be.
Great. How long do you expect the 3% loans to be available?
Throughout the end of 2024.
Will nonprofit companies be eligible for these grants?
The grants are going to be probably focused on for-profit entities. And I say probably because we've not finalized all the eligibility criteria. But I do think that it's likely true that the preponderance of the dollars will go to those small businesses that are trying to create jobs and wealth in our communities. That may not be exclusively true, though. So I want to just hold that caveat in place here. And all of the specific criteria will be posted when we launch the grants in early March.
Great. Can the grant alone be used for franchises?
Good question. The loan, yes. The grant, I'm not sure yet. That's one of the many things that we're still evaluating with respect to the eligibility criteria, and then later the prioritization criteria on how the grants will be dispersed. But that's a good question that I think we'll be very, very clear on when we launch the grant. Loans, no problem.
Great. How about if you are waiting on your licenses and need some help with the finances and fees that are connected to getting the license?
That is something we absolutely can help you with. So particularly with respect to the 3% interest loan, which is already available now, if you have already started the process, of trying to secure all of your certifications, and you need a little liquidity to get you through that process and then be in a position to build your business, that is something that A4CB can certainly help you with. Now, again, we're going to be evaluating your personal credit history and all the way that I described it, your ability to repay via that debt to income ratio check that I mentioned. But we absolutely and frequently can help those who are in that situation.
What has been the most common issue with grants being denied?
So we haven't launched this grant program yet, so I can't answer that one specifically related to Good Food Fund. I will say generally that my expectation is that once we do launch the Good Food Fund, the primary reasons why people will be ineligible will be, one, they don't have a business in the city of Chicago, and two, they don't have a business that is in the food and beverage space. That is almost certainly going to be the overwhelming primary two reasons for denial. Other than that, it'll be depending on the specific eligibility criteria that we will finalize and post in early March.
Great. Will one take the loan out in the business name or a personal?
Business. So it's a good question. The loan will be in the name of your business. It'll be reported as you as an entrepreneur on your personal credit. And the way that we will be evaluating you is as an entrepreneur, which is kind of a mixture of both. But the loan agreement will be in the name of your business.
Okay, great. Is it strictly for people creating a food product or open to people in the food tech business?
Good question. So food and beverage is going to be something that we'll define pretty broadly for the purposes of the coaching and the lending. So no problem there. Specifically for the grants, again, that's one which we are continuing to evaluate, and we'll have an answer in a couple of weeks as to either it's eligible but not a priority, or not eligible at all, or eligible and a priority. I'm not sure about that. So loans and coaching, no problem. Grants, I'm not sure yet.
Great. How many recipients will be awarded the grant?
That's going to depend on the average grant size. So we've got $5 million that we're going to be dispersing to food and beverage businesses in 2024. We're doing that in 2 rounds. So therefore we expect we'll have $2.5 million available in the spring/early summer, and another $2.5 million available in the fall/early winter. How many people receive that grant will be a function of the math, because it'll be a variable amount that you would be eligible for and therefore receive. And depending on where that average grant size lands, that will depend on how many grants we can fund up to the $2.5 million in the first round, $2.5 million in the second round. So not quite sure yet. I would say that the grant sizes will be between the maximum grant size is $100,000. The minimum grant size is likely to be $5,000. So there's a huge swing between those two things, and we don't have a feel yet for what that average grant size will be.
Great. They're asking for prices for a kitchen rental space, so maybe information on the hatchery.
Yes.
And then
So,
while you're doing that, can you post your email again, please? So it might be on the same slide.
yeah, we'll do. So the pricing for the hatchery is something we will eagerly talk to you about, because it depends on a lot of things. So a4cb.org/coaching is the place to go to just set up a 30-minute discussion where we can just listen carefully to what your business is trying to achieve, how much space you need, how frequently you need that space. And also, let me highlight the fact that if you are a West Side entrepreneur, we have reduced rates for all of the entrepreneurs who are from the community that we are based in. Now, we're eager to serve food and beverage businesses from anywhere, but we have preferential pricing for West Side entrepreneurs. So it totally depends on what you're trying to accomplish as to what those pricing points are. But as long as you establish that 30-minute discussion, we'll talk you through all the details that are specific to you.
Can the grant be used in conjunction with the NOF grant?
Yes. So there's going to be no prohibition against having multiple funding sources, whether those be grants or loans or whatever it might be. It's not clear yet as to whether people who have already received a city grant from another program will be deprioritized relative to those who have received no such funding yet. We'll be working through those kind of eligibility and prioritization issues as we go here over the next couple of weeks. But there'll be no prohibition against somebody applying for and securing a Good Food Fund grant simply because you received a grant from some other place.
Great. People are asking about the recording. It will be on youtube.com/Chicago BACP. That's youtube.com/Chicago BACP. And I will put that in the chat again. Another question, can you get coaching mentorship without any interest in grants or loans?
Absolutely. So we do a lot of work with a lot of entrepreneurs who are just fine on cash, but they have specific either tactical or strategic questions about how to grow their business. They just like somebody to help out with. And so we've got a team of 6 people who spend all day, every day, talking with entrepreneurs about the specific issues that those entrepreneurs are seeking to solve for. And again, it could be kind of anything that an entrepreneur might need because the journey is diverse or so diverse amongst the way that entrepreneurs are trying to build their businesses and the challenges they're seeking to overcome, the opportunities to try to exploit and so forth. So we encourage you to just sign up for one of those sessions and then have a conversation, and we'll take it from there depending on what you need.
Great. How long would likely the approximate turnaround time be after applying for the business license through ACE4CB? I think they mean the business loan.
Yeah, so let's talk about both of those briefly. One, if you're applying for a business license, A4CB is here to help. We do a lot of coaching on the licensing process, but you'd be applying for that license through the city of Chicago, through the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. The turnaround time for that, I can't specifically speak to on behalf of the city, but obviously they're working very, very hard to be as quick as possible to turn around those license requests. If you're specifically talking about applying for a business loan, then that turnaround time is as little as 24 hours. And the average time is usually about 2 to 3 days, which again, relative to anybody who's applied for a business loan from a major bank, you will know is markedly different than the typical experience that you would find amongst lenders. That amount of time typically has to do with answering any questions that we have for you based on that initial read that we do in an electronic fashion via our technology system, where we need to just get clarification on something, and then you answer that question for us, and then on we go. That's typically what that day or two extra is for, but it kind of does depend on your particular application. If you are responsive to us and our questions, we will move fast in order to make sure that we are using your time wisely, because we know that entrepreneurs' time is very, very scarce and you got a lot to do. And if you're applying for a loan, you're not applying for a loan a year from now. You need the money soonish, and therefore we want to be there for you.
Great. Is there a charge for the 12-week training program?
No. So let's talk about the Neighbor Entrepreneurship Lab for a minute. I kind of glossed over that just for time. We have a cohort-based program where we have 15 entrepreneurs at a time who work together over a 12-week period, once in the spring and another cohort in the fall, in order to do all of the following. One, establish a growth plan that helps to guide your thinking on how to grow your business over the long term. Two, you do that in partnership with an individual business advisor that is assigned to you, as well as the group work that we do collectively, where we bring in guest speakers and also work individually with just you on your individual growth plan. And three, we provide a $20,000 grant to each one of those entrepreneurs in order to help finance the starting of that growth strategy. So I will just say that it is a fabulous program. It's always oversubscribed. So when you go to a4cb.org/coaching, you will see that there's an expression of interest form there. But A4CB is eager to keep providing that service to entrepreneurs who are in a position to be able to build upon success that they've had already. So this is not a startup program. This is a program for those who've been in business for a while and now are seeking to grow, and that we think have a real prospect for growth that is going to create wealth and jobs in our communities. And those are the people we typically would invite to then come into the Neighbor Entrepreneurship Lab. If you're not quite ready when you express interest in that, that's fine. Free coaching is still available to you for as long as you would like it on a one-on-one basis. And then perhaps down the road, at a future cohort, we'll be able to work with you within that context. So thank you for the prompt on that. And a4cb.org/coaching is the place to learn more.
Great. Does business ownership structure matter, LLC versus individual?
It does not. We're eager to work with you regardless of how you're structured, whether it's an LLC, sole proprietor, corp, doesn't make a difference to us.
In the process, can you help with investors as well?
We can. So we on a fairly frequent basis, get requests from entrepreneurs just through our coaches, where the 30-minute session begins with something like, I'm doing fine. I'm considering taking on investors. I need to weigh the benefits and costs of doing that. The benefits, of course, are I have more capital available to me. The costs, amongst others, are I'm giving away some of the upside of my future business earnings because I've taken an equity partner, and that person's going to take part of the ownership of the company and the value that I'm generating. So those conversations are really important, and we've got people who do that a lot, those conversations a lot. And so we'll be eager to help you to just think through your options, depending on the specifics of the investor situation that you're in.
Great. If you are a business that isn't in Chicago, but you are working and licensed in a commercial kitchen in Chicago, and you sell your food in Chicago, are we eligible for a loan or grant?
Loan, yes, no doubt about that. The grant is going to depend on where your business address is. If your business has its primary location within the city of Chicago, then you'll be eligible. If your business has a primary location that's outside of the city of Chicago, then you won't be. And the way that we're going to substantiate that is very likely going to be looking at either your license or your tax returns or some combination of those to substantiate that you are a city of Chicago primary location business. All of those details will be posted once the grant application is available. But the primary address does need to be in the city in order to be eligible for the city program.
Great. I have an established business, but would like to open up a new one. Could I use the loan money to open up a new one?
Absolutely.
Okay. What is the address to your location, and can I just walk in?
We're at 135 North Kedzie. That's the specific address. It's right at the corner of Lake and Kedzie, right at the Kedzie Green Line stop. And you absolutely can walk in if you'd like. When you walk in the front door, you say, I'd like to speak with Allies for Community Business. We are right there, right next to the front door.
A few questions about business licenses. Can you apply for a business license at Allies? Can you help a liquor license application at Allies? So just more of the, what can you actually do with the business license?
Yeah.
System?
So I mentioned that we are Allies for Community Business, one of the 8 Chicago business centers around the city. Our role in that construct is to help entrepreneurs to figure out what licenses they need, and then to help provide guidance to go through the city process of licensing. And I should say that it's not just the city process, of course, because depending on what you're trying to do, you may have a state process you need to go through or whatever it might be. So the person, the entity who's actually providing your license is going to be the city or the state or wherever you need to get your licenses. And again, we'll help you to figure that out. So our role there is as coach rather than provider of license. But we work very closely, particularly with the City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, to make sure that our coaches are fully up to date on all of the specifics about what is required, particularly of food and beverage businesses. So we provide you the specific advice that you need in order to get through the city process in an efficient way.
Great. If a grant is open for startup, should I start coaching now?
You can start coaching at any time you'd like. So I think the way to think about it, in my opinion, is that you should view each of these 3 services, the grants, the loans, and the coaching, as certainly interrelated, no doubt about that, because A4CB is providing all of them in partnership with the City of Chicago. But they're also distinct in their own right. So it depends on what you need and what you would value as to what you should spend your time doing. If you think that working with one of our business coaches would be valuable for your business, then you should do it. If you think, well, I really only want the grant and maybe I should go talk to a business coach so it looks like I care enough to get the grant, don't do that. That's a waste of your time. Instead, focus on what you would value: coaching, grants, loans, and spend your time both applying for and then receiving that specific service or set of services.
Great. I think this is the last question. If we get denied the grant in the spring, can we apply in the fall?
Yes. So that's part of the idea behind having multiple rounds, where our suspicion is, first, there'll be some applicants for the grant in the first round who could plausibly be eligible but aren't yet. We want to give you good guidance on what the difference is between being eligible now and being eligible later. It's true for loans too, but let's focus specifically on grants. And there'll be another round. And therefore, you can sort of take on those bits of advice and make adjustments if you wish in order to apply again successfully, perhaps the next time. In addition to that, we're also going to be evaluating very carefully how successful we are in meeting the demand for the grants in the first round. So if we find that we've got $2.5 million to disperse, and the demand for that, even amongst those who are eligible, setting aside those who aren't eligible yet, but even amongst those who are eligible, the demand is far in excess of the $2.5 million, and it might well be. I suspect that it will be. Then we're going to be thinking about, well, what adjustments in the second round should we make in order to be able to meet more of that demand for more food and beverage businesses in the city of Chicago? So we absolutely intend to learn from what we do in the first round in order to apply those lessons for the second round and serve more people.
Great. Can you tell one more time when the grant will come out and how they can apply and where they can find the information?
Yep. So the exact date of when the grant will launch, I don't know yet. I will say that it'll be in early March. So we're talking a couple weeks from now, roughly. Where to go is that BACP site, which we cited in the beginning. I'm going to drop into the chat. It's probably already in there, but let me just drop it in there just to be absolutely sure that you have it. And I'm going to do that right now. It is a City of Chicago site. It'll be the landing page for this. When we do all of the just did it right there. When we do all of the promotion for the program, just know that we will make it very, very clear where you should go in order to access the grant application. And even before that, to access all of the eligibility criteria that you can review so you can decide, should I waste my time on this or not? Is this a good investment of my time? If so, let's go for it, because free money is the best kind of money. If I'm not going to be eligible, then obviously I shouldn't spend the time on it. We want to be clear on which is which.
Great. That looks like all the questions. There is one more question is, can I apply for my business license if I don't want to go downtown? So just a few more questions on that licensing aspect and how allies can help.
Yeah, we can provide you with the advice that you need. You do need to then apply through the city system. So that starts with an online process through the City of Chicago licensing system. I think it's certainly true to say that a good majority of the entrepreneurs who we work with decide through that process that going downtown to secure the license is the fastest way to do it. That's what they choose to. But you do have options on that, and we'll help you decide which options are going to be most sensible for you.
Great. Last question coming in. Do you know how long the disbursement of the grant funds will take after the approval? And will there be reporting back with the grant?
The disbursement process, once the grants are approved, will be really quick. So the way that work in practice is that we will make final determinations on, in the first round of grants, who will be the recipients of that $2.5 million. Then we will very shortly thereafter, meaning days, not weeks, we'll then invite those who were deemed to be eligible and selected for those grants to come in and claim your funds by just connecting the business bank account that you told us about in your original application, but didn't connect to, because why would you if you don't have the grant approved yet? You will then connect your business bank account to our system. That means we can just send you electronically the funds. And that's the way that process will work, and it tends to be very, very fast. The second round will then be later in the year, and that I suspect will be pretty deep into the winter, but absolutely we'll be dispersing the grants before the end of the year, because that's the deadline for the program. So that turnaround time will be pretty tight. Part of what we'll be communicating really, I think, aggressively with all of the grant applicants. So we need everybody to pay attention to the email address they use when they signed up for the grant, because that's how we're going to send you the link to go claim your funds. So if you are successful in your application and you don't come claim your funds, we're going to try to find you. Like, you gave us an email address, you gave us a phone number, we're going to use it. But if you don't come back and claim the funds, then obviously move on to somebody else. So that time sort of turnaround, that sensitivity, is something that we'll be really clear about as we go.
Okay, great. That is all the questions that we have. They're asking for the website one more time. I'm going to put it into the chat as well.
Geraldine, you were really good at this. Get through a lot of questions. Thank you for doing that.
No worries. We did good. We got them all done. I want to thank everyone for attending. This will be posted again on youtube.com/Chicago BACP. I want to thank Isabel and Brad. Thank you guys as always. Such a great presentation. And again, youtube.com, Chicago BACP, and then the information on the grant, chicago.gov/BACP recovery plan. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.